Welcome to Module 5, Testing Terminology. So, every profession has its own vocabulary, and testing is no exception. So, we'll clear up the words beginners constantly mix up, like defect, bug, error, or failure, and we'll also define the building blocks of test design, like test cases and test scenarios. So, it's very important that you use these terms correctly instantly because it will make you someone who knows the field. And interviews probe whether you understand the error versus defect versus bug or the failure difference. Clear terminology prevents miscommunication with developers and managers as well. So I've seen candidates who use bug and error interchangeably in interviews and lose credibility. And I've seen people who come for training who get mixed up with these words so easily, but by the end of this short module you'll use each of these terms precisely and understand the change connecting them. So this is the conceptual core. Let's walk through the different terms that we come across. So error is a human mistake. Developer writes maybe A greater than B but means A less than B. That's an error. ISTQB also calls it a mistake. Defect, on the other hand, is that error that is once in the code, it's there in the code, it becomes a defect. It's a flaw sitting in the software whether or not anyone has noticed it. And failure is when the software runs and the defect makes it behave wrongly, wrong output, crash, freeze. That's a failure, whatever the user experiences. So you need to understand that not every defect can cause a failure because there might be some dead code path which never gets executed. But every failure definitely comes from a defect and every defect started as an error. So it's a chain. So in casual use, bug is equivalent to defect. There's a precise distinction. A defect will become a bug once a tester formally reports it in a tracking tool. So you can compare it with our analogy, maybe the food, the dish preparation, something a chef is following. So if a chef misreads the recipe, it's an error. If the dish is made with salt but not sugar, then it's a defect. When customer tastes it, it's awful, that's a failure. And if the waiter writes a complaint ticket, that's a bug report. So you might come across questions like difference between error or bug, defect and bug, defect and failure. And you can use the chain that we just discussed. Human mistake creates flaw in the software. When the flaw is reported, that's a bug, and the wrong behavior that is experienced by the user is a failure. Now, the most commonly confused terms, defect and bug, let's throw a little more light on them. In casual talk, people use them interchangeably, but there's a precise distinction that's worth knowing. So, defect is an issue that is found by a tester. Software does not match the expected behavior or requirement. The defect exists in the product. A tester discovers during the testing phase. Bug is a defect that has been reported to the developers. Once you log it in a tool like Jira with some steps, severity and priority, it's a bug with an owner and a life cycle. All bugs are defect and a defect will become a bug once it is reported. So when it is found, it's a defect. When it is reported, it's a bug. In real world, most teams say bug for everything, but in an interview, knowing the precise distinction shows the depth of understanding you have of the subject. Now we come to error and failure. So error is a mistake that is made by a developer, a human action producing an incorrect result. Mistyping a formula, misunderstanding requirement, the root cause, that's an error. Failure is when the system behaves incorrectly during execution. When a user clicks on a button and the app crashes, this is a visible symptom. what the user experiences when a defect is triggered at a runtime. Now let's tie it back. The full chain is developer will make an error. Error will become a defect in the code. If it is found and reported, it becomes a bug. But if it is triggered at runtime in the user environment, that's a failure. So error is the cause, failure is the effect. Defect is the flaw that hangs in between. I would also want to add here that a failure requires execution, and a defect in the code that never runs never becomes a failure. So you can connect it to verification. Static is finding the defects versus validation is surfacing the failures. Now let's have a very quick view, a high level view at what a test scenario and a test case is. So test scenario is a high level testing objective, a one line describing functionality that we have to validate. For example, verify the login functionality. It will tell you what to test at the broad level. Test case, on the other hand, is a detailed, documented set of steps that verifies a specific condition, some preconditions, steps, test data, expected results. It also tells you how to test. So a scenario can expand into many cases. For example, verify login can be further bifurcated into valid username and password, successful scenario. Invalid password, that will give a error message. Third case can be empty fields, which would trigger validation prompts. Then the fourth test case would be logged out account, which means access denied. So scenarios will give you a broad coverage and feature level thinking. It's very good for agile speed. And test cases will give you detailed, repeatable, auditable steps that are essential for thoroughness and new joiners. So maybe you can think of scenario as to what to test at high level, and case is how you test it, detailed steps. So one scenario can give you multiple test cases. All right, so now with this we come to the final slide where we'll be looking at the terminologies that we have discussed in the module. So error is a mistake that's done by a developer. Defect is issue that is found by a tester. Bug is a defect that is reported to developers. Failures is the incorrect behavior of system at the runtime at the user end. Test scenario is a high level testing objective, and test case is a documented steps to verify the functionality. Now you have a clear idea about the chain of error, defect, bug and failure, and the design pair, how scenario and test cases can be related. In the upcoming modules, we'll be talking about how the defect life cycle is, and also what are the different fields that we fill for it. So like, subscribe and share. Comment which pair confuses you the most. Is it the error defect or the scenario test case? See you in module 6 where we follow a bug through its entire life. Thank you.